tonight's live stream as I get my phone kind of angled right and pull up the streamed monitor on here. So what we are working on tonight is Zamo the Destroyer. I've mentioned before about, let's move this so we don't have the corner of my laptop hogging up screen space. I've mentioned before about this was a 2013 reboot that never happened. Zamo the Destroyer was my first webcomic that I was doing from 2006 to 2009. And then in 2014, I ended up rebooting it as a podcast. But before then, I was going to reboot it as a comic, and then it didn't happen. So I drew these 8 pages, serve as a reintroduction or a Zamo explaining what's been going on in the 4 years between, and then I completely forgot about it. So anyways, we are inking this because I'm getting ready to do a Zamo book. So this will be kind of not the actual coda, because I think I should do like a 1 or 2 page sort of thing that bridges from the visual comics to the book that I'll do after that. Will be starting to take the podcast scripts and treat them like short stories and illustrate them. And anyways, so that's what we'll be doing on next Wednesday, which means I better draw it this coming weekend. Anyways, but we've got 2 last pages. So far, Zamo gave updates on what the cartoonist, i.e. the lazy monkey who draws the cartoon, me, was doing in the years in between. Talked about how the neighborhood had changed. Talked about Georgie's dumb ex-boyfriend who Zamo never liked. Now we're going to get into another character. Well, also introduce Mr. Heidel, who became a major character during the podcast version. And now we're going to, on this page, Zamo talks about a couple, well, one main character, which is Georgie's brother, and then a minor character named Skunky, and then we have the final wrap-up where Zamo is in Zamo's secret basement lab. So that's kind of the rough thing. So enough talking. Well, I'll still be talking, but enough talking without drawing. Let's get to the drawing. It is not in very deep. Hang on. You know, some of these pen, like the handle parts, the nibs will go all the way in, and there's one, I don't know if it's probably got like hard and dried. Oh, there we go. All I had to do was move it to the other side. So that side has got to have some dried ink or whatever. So it's like, okay, why is this not going any further in? Anyways, technical difficulties. Not just for digital drawing. Anyways, so here we have, what is that? Oh, voicemail. Okay. I am not going to go and see who left me a voicemail. Or anybody who would leave me a voicemail, I guess, can just, just, there we go. I think I'm back on. Hello? Hello? Sorry. My dad's in his 80s, so sometimes it's like, oh, if I get a voicemail, I'm like, oh crap, what's going on? And then I felt like I had to go and dip out to see what was going on my phone, and then I see the recent number, and it was very, very clearly telemarketer. Whatever. Sorry about that. So let me just make sure that my audio is coming on. So, yeah, okay, it came back. This is one of the reasons I need to stop streaming on my phone. Anyways, I mean, I'm kind of working on that. I've downloaded OBS and whatnot. The problem is that YouTube mostly shares my live links on the vertical live feed, which means that if I wanted to stream with OBS, I'd kind of have some issues. Anyways, whatever. That's inside baseball for myself. One of the things I'm going to be working on, actually, while we're talking nuts and bolts of streaming, is be doing taking some of these streams and making some like compilation videos and whatnot. So I know, especially because I stream 5 nights a week now. Actually, I'm starting to do like a Sunday one as well. Um, I realize that things kind of get buried. So if you're coming in on, well, say tonight where it's Zamo the Destroyer, and you're not familiar, it's kind of a pain in the ass to go back and find out what's been going on. So I'm kind of thinking I may take um, some of these streams and turn them into like compilation videos. I mean, they'd be like 8 hours long for Zamo because this will be probably about a 2 hour video by the time we're done tonight, etc. But then it would be kind of like all the episodes related to this Zamo reboot would be in one ultra long video. So if somebody wanted to binge it, then they could, you know. Um, so I might do that, but I'd probably, instead of having it vertical, I'm going to put it into OBS the with the background and all that sort of stuff, and make it kind of more look like a normal video. And the brother's thumb kind of looks a little messed up, but we'll have to Photoshop that. Anyways, that's a whole other thing. But the other thing I've thought about, everybody talks about, like, well, not everybody, but a lot of people talk about, you know, the 24/7 streaming and whatnot. And heard some people swear by it and others be like, well, yeah, but you get plays, but then they don't count unless you start and stop your video every 12 hours, in which case it's not really 24/7 streaming, right? Anyways, so that's something I'm looking into as well, like whether my content would make sense in that. I mean, I certainly have more than enough videos. The thing is, then I'd have to basically dedicate a laptop to doing nothing but running OBS and long streams. I don't know. I might set it up to do it overnight on my current computer. You know, it's like, well, if I'm going to be asleep, I'm not using it, right? Just put it on the floor next to the router and have it run. Um, so I guess we have this sort of. So, anyways, there's. Let's give him kind of like a this sort of effect. Right before coming on the stream tonight, I was watching. I think his name's Jason, but his channel is The Inspired Life. He's doing a really cool, super vibrantly colored little like fishing hut illustration, which is really cool. And then I was working on the blue line drawings for tomorrow's stream, which is from the Noah's Archipelago coloring book that I'm working on. So I'm doing a whole bunch of sort of behind the scenes stuff today. Just for balance, we got to do that. And his head's in the way of the point, and that's just how it goes. And this was definitely back when I used to live in Richmond in Vancouver. Now I see I've messed up. It probably doesn't show on camera because there's a non-photo blue underdrawing on this, but it's a really, really light one. But I can see that I screwed up because I did not draw the separate island for the Vancouver International Airport, which is that. Because Richmond kind of has this little cutout here. That's the island I spent most of my life on. I now live on Vancouver Island across the Georgia Strait. So if that's Richmond here, and they're kind of drawn roughly in the part of Richmond. Well, actually, I guess the part of Richmond I lived in was kind of where the L is. But there, then you come down here to the ferry terminal, actually right around White Rock, but over here in Tsawwassen. And then you get a 2-hour ferry over to the island and you drive an hour south, and that's where I live now. Well, actually, you could also get the 1.5-hour ferry to Victoria and then drive an hour north. But anyways, it's kind of a bit of a rough estimate of where things are. I'm not going to bother to draw in bridges and whatnot. So I think I will. Part of me is like, do I make the water black and then this pops out, but then it's all blank, right? But I don't really feel like looking up map stuff to fill it in. So, yeah, let's just play around and see what happens. Drawing a few random details. Kind of looks like an airplane. My brother lived in White Rock for a number of years. Time when he was working downtown, he actually did take the bus for a while, and then it was just like to get from White Rock to like about here, well, roughly to here in Richmond, so you could get the SkyTrain. It was like it ended up being like a 2, sometimes 3-hour commute each way, as opposed to just getting in his car and yes, he'd sit in traffic, but he'd be home in like half the time, and he could blast his music super loud and not have to breathe other people's germs. So like even though it obviously cost more in terms of gas and paying for parking and all that, I remember him thinking that that was kind of the wisest decision that he made. I'm just gonna leave it that way. Uh, so now I'm going to take a fatter nib and we will do the kind of the thinner lines to divide the narration from the illustration, and then the fatter lines to divide up the panels. I have not done this sort of for the graphic novel I'm working on now, Ricky B Goes to Sea. I left all the narration mixed in with the drawings, and now I have to go back and try and figure out a good way to separate them without screwing up either the narration or the drawings. So yeah, going forward, I will definitely be planning ahead for that sort of stuff. Now for the fatter lines. I say when I moved out of Richmond, I was like so glad to get the hell out of there. But now, part of me is like, you know, I kind of miss it. Richmond had really bad traffic. It was really congested, and it was kind of a small house. Actually, it was still the house I grew up in because I lived with my dad, and it's kind of too small for two adults. But at the time, for most of those years, well, not those years, but most of the years after my mom passed, it was just me and my dad. I actually had a rehearsal studio at Main and Second, which would be about there, where the C and crawl space is. That would roughly be where Main and Second was. So that kind of made it more bearable. But yeah, over here going, there are some definitely some amenities that Richmond has that where I live now doesn't. Anyways, so yeah, I think that's actually supposed to just be grass. Never mind, because there's a sandcastle there. You just hide things and they go away. This is definitely not going to be a realistic depiction of a beach or waves, but it's also not realistic that we would have an iguana walking around on her hind legs and gossiping with us. So. Where's when my brother did get divorced in that time frame, which is what kind of it doesn't really look like my brother at all. But anyways, that was kind of what inspired this. But my nephew was definitely well beyond the age of playing with sandcastles, but it just made for a better visual. So we kind of just ignored that part where this was not at all accurate. Vancouver beaches, but there's always on the beach, it'd be logs. So you should add a few. Yeah, just one. Maybe two. It'll probably get completely vanished by the time I um, ink that, but whatever. Or ink the line, I mean. A lot of the bus stop, the poles that have the bus stop signs all seem to be this kind of square tubular steel that has little holes drilled in it. Um, anyways, what I'm looking for. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's. Of course, the other thing is Vancouver. Like, there's a couple months of the year where you'll see people in bikinis on the beach, but there's a whole lot of months of the year where you'll see people dressed the way I'm about to show them. I guess because I've got Zomo down in the corner, guess it can't be that cold if Zomo's going outside, but whatever. The whole point of the gag is to show Zomo being chilled. barely make out my underdrawing. It's really crazy light. Everybody kind of wearing mittens here. I think what I'll do, since I've showed a couple people um, bundled up, I'm going to show Zamo wearing a little sweater. I sort of finished that, but let's just put in a little bit of concrete texture for the sidewalk. May go back with the thicker pen and kind of make some darker areas in the clothing afterwards, but we will move on for now. One thing I definitely don't miss about living in the lower mainland is over here on the island, we actually don't have skunks. So if you smell something that smells like a skunk, it's somebody with really shitty weed. But got raccoons, we got other pests. For example, I perpetually have issues in my garden where the damn squirrels have planted hazelnuts where they don't belong, that sort of crap. But we do not have skunks, so that's at least one positive thing about here. This is a joke for a friend of mine who will know exactly who I'm talking about. Look up, actually. Can't remember. Do skunks have black bellies or white bellies? Let's have a quick look-see on the computer. Skunk belly. Kind of a white. So, all right. I mean, some of them have like a more profound. Uh, the markings seem to vary. Some of them have at least on the top of the Google image search, some of them have like a pure white belly, and some of them just have like a white stripe or whatever. So there we go. Kind of echo the image of Georgie's brother. Except up here, it's going to be these like stink lines. If you've ever had a good close-up look at an iguana, you may be familiar with the fact that their pupils are triangular, or not triangular, diamond-shaped. I mean, the diamond's just two triangles stacked on top of each other, right? So, so here we go, and there we go. We just put in our panel and narration block lines, and then we are done with this page. And then we've got one more page to do, which is just one really big drawing. All right, so really have to tidy up a few things. Definitely have to tidy up some things in Photoshop because I've definitely run the text way too close, um, which is, I guess, kind of a signature thing with me, but it is kind of annoying, like in that case. All right, now let's let's move on to page 8 of this reboot. Right. So I think actually the first thing I'm going to do is put in the narration box line. Just love that. Don't know how often the lazy monkey will be drawing the comic this time around. Guess we'll find out soon enough. Yeah, the answer was I didn't. Drew this, set it aside, never inked these 8 pages. As you can tell down here, 2013, that's when it was drawn. 2014, sometime in August, I actually is when I started doing Zamo as a podcast. 2014 August, and so yeah, that's why I'm saying kind of I was gonna just do these 8 pages as like a coda to the treasury, I guess you would call it, of all the Zomo webcomics. But I know I have that other material that will be coming afterwards. Um, so this kind of leaves it a little too, you know, too much with the expectation that there's going to be another book of actual comics. In fact, the book is going to be, I mean, there'll be illustrations, but it's basically short stories. So, Anarchist Cookbook. Anybody else read that as a kid? Remember when I was in, must have been like still elementary, like, but like sixth or seventh grade. A couple of my classmates who had like, I guess back then it was bulletin boards, the BBS stuff, bulletin board services, proto internet. Had managed to download a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook, and we were all like passing it around at school. And um, I think that exact same printout was still circulating a couple years later in eighth grade, but we all thought we were so cool. I don't think really any of us, even the guys who were kind of said they were into it, I think they, more into like fireworks, firecrackers and stuff, but I don't think any of them actually like boiled down urine to make urea crystals to make bombs or all the other. That was one that I remember, vividly remember from being inside that book, but it was definitely a classic of, disgruntled teenage reading. Essentially, that would be extra dark. Would blend down towards where the grow light is shining. If anyone's not familiar, the reference to Palehead being bunny number 7 is, if you're familiar with Al Jorgensen from Ministry, that was one of his side projects in the 80s was Palehead. They put out a EP called Trait. Um, and back in my college radio days, even though it was, you know, 20 years after that EP came out, it was one of the things I played a ton of. I think I have it on vinyl. I think I have a couple Palehead records. I'm pretty sure I have Trait, and I think I may have single. I guess would be I Will Refuse. Can't remember now. I'd have to go look at my. I don't have a lot of records. I used to have more, but I only have a few. Still have a ton of CDs. Honestly, these days I mostly just listen via Spotify to stuff I already paid for. Sometimes 3 or 4 times over. But you get the convenience of the playlists and whatnot. Georgie's probably wondering where her good butcher knife that she uses for cutting up watermelon in the summer has. Where has that gone to? Actually, Georgie should probably know that the first place you look is Zamo's secret basement lab, but Georgie's not allowed to get in there. And actually, Georgie's a little, being a human, it's a bit, kind of has some issues with fitting. So, this to have kind of the implication that Zelmo made um, target shooting posters. Not that Zelmo has access to firearms, or at least Zelmo is not supposed to. Now, when we got into the podcast, we found out about Zamo's cousin Sticky, whose pet human is part of a biker gang. Cousin Sticky would sometimes smuggle things to Zamo, but I think usually just tasers and stuff like that. Homemade napalm. I swear that was. Trying to remember. There is all sorts of stuff in that anarchist cookbook. Uh, stupid, stupid book, but Um, of course, part of me is going like, okay, I'm streaming this live on YouTube. There's some things that I have heard. There's definitely some stuff that you could do a pre-recorded video and mention, but if you're doing a live stream, that it could get the stream pulled down. Um, Comedy show that I watched, and there was something they did like a month ago, and it was a news story. It wasn't even their video. It was like CNN or ABC or whatever, but it had we'll just say a boom boom stick in the screen, and their stream apparently went down as soon as that the AI recognized it. They're like trying to figure out why is our stream dead, and it's like, oh, what time did it go down? I didn't even know if they got like a community guidelines warning or whatever, but or if they just kind of figured it out by stream has been removed, and then looked at the timestamp when it seemed to drop out, and they're like, oh, we were just doing that news story, but yeah. Anyways, something I will have to consider in the future with Samo. Though maybe because it's a cartoon, it won't matter. But Samo is definitely engages in a lot of bad behavior. Um, there's actually one of the podcast scripts is where a burglar breaks into the house, and Zamo basically holds him hostage and uses a taser against him, all that sort of stuff. Um, so I'll have to be careful how I illustrate that. Mind you, I suspect with, you know, a bunch of that stuff, I won't necessarily be showing every single drawing on stream. Kind of like with Noah, what I'm working on Thursday nights, Noah's jobs, the A to Z of Noah's jobs, or whatever the title of that coloring book is. It's like, well, there's some stuff where I'm just, it does not actually, because I'll end up having like 52 drawings. So if I did two per week, which is about average, like it would take me 6 months to get through that. But I actually want to have the book finished sooner than that. So I'm going to have to make time to work on it off stream. And then obviously, then those illustrations aren't going to show in the actual stream, right? So, yeah, anyways, that's a whole other thing. It's kind of like looking at the first Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat short story book. I'm going to have, probably, I would like to have, anyways, I should put it that way. The plan is to have, um, you know, at least two, if not three or four drawings per short story. And there's each book is probably gonna have well, the first one's definitely gonna have 12 stories, like, it's A Year in Ratsville. Actually, I think it's got 13. Um, so, yeah, it's gonna be a lot of drawings, so whether they would all end up on stream, I don't know. Plus, then it's kind of like, even with the coloring book, it'd be kinda nice to not show everything, because then, once it's for sale, people are getting some stuff that they have not seen before, which is kinda nice, I think. And no idea what this is supposed to be. This looks like a weird piece of paper. I don't know. It's like 10 years later, more than that, 13 years later, it's like some of this I'm just looking going, I have no idea what I was trying to draw. We're just gonna take a rough guess. Yeah, I gotta watch out for Zamo's head spines. Also, looking at this, I don't think that this is at all accurate for what hydroponic berries. I would imagine you would have berry plants and then like because these are strawberries runners going off, but we're just gonna ignore that. And we're just gonna draw like insanely massive strawberries. And the kind that are like the size of your fist, which I mean that does happen. You do have some varieties that have really, really big fruit. It's yeah. Like looking at my watch stats, and I definitely should have ignored that voicemail at the beginning of the show because now it kind of looks like ever since that point, the only view has been um, my laptop. So I don't know. I probably screwed up the stream when I did that. Well, I have to Google and see, can I stream on my phone if my phone is in do not disturb mode? Or does that, does it have to be connected somehow? I don't know. Does that look like water? Probably not. I don't know. Just gonna angle this up. I don't know if that shows up on camera, but I'm trying to figure out where everything is, right? So there's another desk across here, and we're seeing stuff that's underneath those desks. All right. Okay. I think at this point I need to work left to right. So I'm drawing something over a Bunsen burner. If y'all have not heard or seen anything from the channel Nile Red and Nile Blue, highly recommended. Like, I'm not much of one for chemistry or whatnot, but they make it pretty entertaining. Although some of the decisions are, I think, questionable. Like, what was the one? It's like making sodas out of like toxic stuff, and it's like, okay, I understand I watch, mind you, well, some would argue so does our toxic period. Um, like I get that, he's following all the chemical solutions to get something in theory non-toxic at the end, but part of me is always just cringing, going like, call 911. You're drinking poison. I know it's been through 30 steps and it's been purified and it should be just fine, but anyways, he had one episode where it was like trying to make the stinkiest chemical possible, like literal weapons grade stink. The bit after he succeeded, where he's getting like his editors and whatnot, like, here, have a sniff of this. And they all looked like they were gonna throw up. It's like it's fun, like it's stupid fun, but it was fun. Do I know what electronics components look like? Vaguely. Am I gonna draw them properly? Hell no. We're just gonna have things that look like springs and wires and all sorts of stuff coming out of that box. Perspective is all weird. This cabinet is like angled this way instead of like the verticals being vertical, but well, one thing's for sure, if I did mess up this stream and it's not watchable, well, I guess it depends. Oh no. I guess if it was all messed up, then I wouldn't have anything to add into like a video compilation, but hopefully I'm actually still live. It would suck otherwise, but okay, where is let's draw Zamo before we start shading in the area behind Zamo. This is not a Rona mask, because this is long before then. This is a mad scientist surgeon mask, or a mad scientist safety, not in. Well, I guess if Zamo was going to be doing something, well, Zamo is doing something nasty with chemicals down here, but she was probably wearing like an actual respirator or something like that instead. But there we go. Funny when I've gone back and looked at some of the old comics, and particularly actually the podcasts. It's a little bit like, what the beep? Still have no idea what the hell that was supposed to be. Because if it was a keyboard, that wouldn't make sense, because where's the rest of the computer? There's various screens and electronics down there. Oh well. Mind you, Zomo frequently would say that humans are not allowed in the secret basement lab, so I guess it's fitting that I have no idea what Zomo is up to. And even though I draw the comic, just because I am human, so I would not be welcome to explore and see what was going on in this secret basement lab. By the way, what we've got here is called the dewlap. That's that flap of skin that iguanas and some other lizards have, comes out from their chin. So kind of use it for displays, including aggression, but of the primary uses too is for sunning themselves. So they'll put themselves sideways to the sun and then bring down their dewlap, and it can be pretty big. Like my iguana, like I had an iguana for 10 years, so. And she was, I mean, she was a female, so not as big as they get. Like the males get a lot bigger. But she was about 20 inches snout vent length. So from the tip of her nose to, her butt in between her hind legs was 20 inches. So almost 2 feet. Actually, might have even been 22. But it was somewhere in there. Let's say 20, because that's the more conservative estimate. Then her tail was about 4 feet long. you know, 3.5 anyways. So if she sat on the back of my parents' couch, which was a 3-person couch, she covered 2/3 of the back from the tip of her nose to the tip of her tail. So anyways, her dewlap, if she brought it down, it was about like that, you know. It was quite big. And of course the males will be even bigger. Now, this character Zamo, to human ways of thinking, Zamo probably comes across as a dude. Zamo's actually female, and you'd kind of have to be. Oops, I just realized. Oh, I'm gonna make a note down here. Fix box overlapping. um, the way you would that was kind of sort of obvious if you're familiar with iguanas. The way you would know that Zalmo was female is because the pet human Georgie is female. And usually, when a male iguana has a pet human or a human who's female, the male iguana is going to think, well, I don't know, she ain't green, but she's what I got, type of thing. And we'll be trying to mate with her and like be very territorial and keeping others away from her and all this because, hey, that's my woman. Whereas female iguanas compete for territory. So, and Zalmo's always kind of in the comic is always trying to get Georgie to get out of the house and trying to take over Georgie's personal space and, you know, dictate how parts of the house are used to Georgie. So very territorial type of stuff, which is how you kind of, which is kind of like the tell that Zamo is a chick. Um, but at the same time, it's like, well, Zamo is an iguana, and there aren't any other. Certainly, in the visual comic, there weren't any other iguanas around, so it kind of didn't really matter. In the podcast, we hear Zamo talking about, family relations and whatnot. Being driven insane by her mother, which, you know, I mean, not that there aren't mothers who drive their sons crazy, but sort of seems that that dynamic is more of a mother-daughter toxic dynamic. And yeah. So, but again, it doesn't really matter because ain't no other iguanas around in the comics. So that's something. Oh yeah, another beaker. So draw some fumes. Salmo really needs to invest in a fume hood, I think. But it's very weird to sort of see this comic of Zalmo, especially because I haven't been doing it for a while. So I'm showing Zalmo kind of at Zalmo's worst, but also with no background explanation really. Whereas by the time this actually appears in the book, it's after 130 odd Zalmo comics. Now, I mean, he's still fairly innocuous versus some of the things that someone gets up to in the podcast version that's discussed. But, it would still be kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, Zamo in the basement lab. Uh, Zamo has this bullfrog Hoppy who Zamo has brainwashed into thinking that Zamo is the Messiah, a superior frog, supreme being, or whatever. So we see Zamo hiding out in the basement lab at different times as well. So that's another concoction that Zamo has there. And oh yeah, big wooden stir spoon. And Zamo in this comic is sized like an actual iguana. So, like that's what kind of makes this fun too, is like some of these things like, well, IKEA did used to make really small like wooden cabinets for like sticking on the corner of your desk, but then that would be for Zamo underneath Zamo's desk kind of size. So, anyways, before I get too much further along this way, I better work backwards. So Zamo's got some old cathode ray tube TVs back here. How did they get back here when those things, some of them will weigh like 50, 60 pounds? Zamo obviously is not doing that lifting herself. I don't know. Probably Hoppy was hypnotized into doing it. And Hoppy also, one of the other stories is Hoppy went and like told the other frogs at the pond So the other frogs at the pond also kind of do whatever Zamo says to do. They're like Zamo's private army. On the one hand, Zamo takes advantage of that. On the other hand, Zamo's a little bit dismayed that, that's all she got. World domination turned out to be the neighborhood frogs. Remember all these old little TVs that used to be available where they had like a built-in VCR and the TV portion. It's only like 12 inches, if that. 8 to 12 inches. These little combo units. I always used to want to get one, but never really bothered. They're fun to draw. Snib is kind of getting to that point of the evening where it wants to give up the ghost for a while. But you gotta power through because there's not that much left to do with this nib. And then after we finish with this nib, I'm gonna grab the fatter ones and we'll put in some, kind of like I did up there, we'll put in some darker spots. Yeah, I think I do have to swap nibs at this point because now it's just kind of tearing up the paper. So, let's my back up. I think this is the one I was using the other day. We'll see. This one really wants to gouge up, but that's what it is. And for this one, I'm just gonna put some diagonals and I'll do like the corner dark areas with the fatter nib. That will work a little better, I think. I don't know why I drew 4 knobs on every single one of these, but just go with that. And the floor, we will also mostly deal with that with the bigger nib. YouTube being YouTube, I probably won't read what that says out loud. Just in case. So I don't want to get in trouble with community guidelines. This is all cartoons, but still. watching what's the dude's channel name? Professor of Rock, I think, where he does like talks about rock music history and whatnot. And there's so many words where he just like spells them out. Like he was talking about well, song is inspired by MURD, so, but I think he's actually gotten community strikes for it. Mind you, what's weird is that usually that there's more, um, get away with more usually in pre-recorded videos rather than live streams, and his stuff's all pre-recorded, but I guess if you get people complaining or I don't know. Uh, so, and this file has like a little cork in it. Something is trying to escape out of that beaker. It'd be interesting to see once this goes up with the whole transcript analyzing. I was talking about a secret basement lab and all these sorts of substances you shouldn't be using and whatnot. It'd be interesting to see what YouTube's AI inspiration thing starts suggesting to me I should make videos about. I was looking at that the other day and it's like got tons of suggestions about submarines and whatnot, which obviously is from like the Ricky B Goes to Sea streams that I do on Friday nights because Ricky's building a submarine, but he doesn't know how to do that because he didn't pay attention in science class and all that. Anyways, the funny thing is that YouTube's AI seems to think that the submarine thing is involved with Noah's archipelago. 'Cause he keeps talking about Noah's submarine. I'm like, you're almost there. Almost. Wrong character, but you're trying. I get it. It was interesting. One of the suggestions was about um, Ricky. I think it was Ricky, or maybe it was Noah, but something to do with the character design of, I think it was Ricky, But, as a gritty detective, like a film noir detective, and I was like, I have never said anything about that with Ricky or Noah. But what's interesting is, and I hadn't talked about it on stream prior to, I don't know, maybe I mentioned it yesterday, but definitely today, is that Noah's daughter Ursula, it's kind of a recurring joke that Ursula likes to pretend to be Inspector Ursula and offer to solve mysteries for her parents for like the low family rate of $500 per mystery. She doesn't have very many clients, and they don't seem to want to pay her. But anyways, it's kind of funny that that lined up. But again, not with the character, mind you. How would the bot know that it's Ursula? Anyways, I think that's gonna be in terms of what I do with this nib. Now I'm going to go over with the fatter nibs, and we'll add a little bit of weight. So, and darken in the floor because, well, I mean, I don't want to darken the floor too much. It can have a splash of light, but it is supposed to be kind of dim in here, which is, iguanas usually like bright lights, but this is the secret basement lab, so, which is Georgie's crawl space. It's, there would be another corner of it that would have like a basking light and whatnot, but this would be the section that's, hidden away behind stuff in the hopes that Georgie won't see it and suspends almost TV privileges for what goes on in this space. Zamo fancies herself as an academic and claims to be an anthropologist doing fieldwork research, but you know, we rarely saw Zamo doing anything that would actually constitute even fake fieldwork, so take it with a grain of salt. Black it in that corner. It's one of those things where it kind of goes, which is creepier? If there's like bright white clinical kind of counters, or if it's all like really dingy and dark and kind of looks like I forget his name, but the mad scientist from Back to the Future, Doc. Um, obviously, he's not doing the same kind of experiments, but of course, what I have stuck in my head now all of a sudden is that old Men at Work song, Dr. Heckle and Mr. Jive. outline that speech bubble to make it, give it a little bit of heft. Let's make pale-headed goth bunny. Why not? There is actually one of the songs on that Palehead EP is called "No Bunny." Is it the on the album EP? Or it might have been a B side on one of the singles. But yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion I know who it was written. It might have been written about, but I'm not gonna. Don't remember seeing anything online about that, so I'm just gonna keep my opinion to myself. But somebody that L. Jorgensen used to work with on occasion, who has always kind of had a bunny as the mascot kind of thing. We'll just say that. So I used to have some dealings with that same individual, but anyways, that's a story for today. So let's give it some shadows here. Assume that one of the main light directions is coming from that grow light there. So in theory, we should be seeing Zamo's tail as well, but we'll just assume that it's kind of down on the ground and not really visible. All right. Kind of feel like that's gonna do it for that drawing. Let's have a look through of the whole 8 pages, shall we? So, just because that is definitely still wet. So to be careful how I do now. No, it's not the thing. Here we go. All right. I can't remember if last time I did a little recap, but we'll do it again in any case. So these are pages 7 and 8. This is page 1 of the recap. I'll just bring that up ever so slightly. So we have Zamo saying it's been a while. Try to move that so we don't have the shadow. You know, I'll just put it on the laptop like that. So it would have been a while if would have been 4 years. So Zamo gives some updates as to what the lazy monkey who draws this comic, i.e., yours truly, was up to in my so-called music career and all that. I still love this drawing of the hipster who likes my obnoxious noise. Um, and then we have Zamo talking a little bit. There's a reference initially to the secret basement lab. We have Hoppy. We have one of the bunnies. Um, and then talking about the neighborhood. So Dave and Bob, the neighbors behind this is where Georgie lives. This is the churchman's new guy. And now these houses have been knocked down for a pool, park, school, community center. And this is where the condos are going. That all becomes relevant in a sec. But Dave and Bob in behind used to have a garden that Zamo used to go raid. And I guess they got sick of it. They dug it out and put in a pool. Churchman's not too thrilled about this. And then we have Zamo complaining about the pool community center and all this, because now there's way more people in the neighborhood. Zamo does not like people. There's trees, which Zamo likes, and there's rabbits, which Zamo likes for trying to capture. But other things that Zamo's not so thrilled about as a result of the new community center. And one of the things that Zama also doesn't like is because there's a gym in there. So now Georgie, instead of driving across town to the gym, Georgie just walks across the street. That means less alone time for Zama, which is unacceptable. And then Zama's talking about the churchmans and their clan ever expanding. Again, Zama doesn't like people. So more babies means more people. Zama not happy. And then the condos that we mentioned. So now we talk about Georgie's ex-boyfriend, Wilhelm, who, by the time you see this in the, keep wanting to call it an anthology, it's not an anthology, it'll be a comic treasury, we will have seen a lot of Wilhelm. So Georgie and Wilhelm have broken up by this point, but Wilhelm bought a condo across the street, kind of to be a creep, honestly, but anyways. And then they decide to stay friends, so Zamo didn't manage to get rid of Wilhelm. Georgie is teaching classes, almost trying to marry Georgie off to mail order husbands. Not succeeding. But hey, I mentioned the new guy. That would be Mr. Heidel. He becomes kind of a major character in the podcast version. So the book that would follow this book, we would start hearing more about Mr. Heidel. And there's like 230 odd podcast scripts. So like that's going to be a couple books, not just the one. It's probably going to be like 4 or 5. We'll see how it goes. But anyways, we've got Mr. Heidel's yard and Zamo trying to find out more about him by like snooping through the mail slot, etc. Then that brings us to the first page we worked on today, and updates for Georgie's brother who's gotten divorced. He's moved to White Rock. Zamo wanted him to move kind of next door to Georgie so Zamo could annex his crawl space to expand the lab. This is what I was saying earlier about Zamo being territorial, which is kind of a clue that Zamo's actually female, despite otherwise behaving in what we would think of as a masculine manner. And then Zamo's new enemy, who has moved into the park across the street, that being Skunky. I think in the podcast, I don't even think we mentioned Skunky again, but it's good to know. Everybody needs an enemy, I guess. Well, probably not, but character like this. So anyways, now we have what we just finished, which is Zamo in the secret basement lab, death to Skunky, another bunny in a cage, hydroponic berries. And we don't even want to know what's going on down here, but it's probably recipes from that. Anyways, so hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. If you have, like, subscribe, all the things, YouTube, etc. And we'll see you again real soon. Tomorrow we are working on coloring book pages for Zamo the Destroyer. or pardon me, did I say Zamo the Destroyer? We're working on Zamo the Destroyer again next Wednesday. Tomorrow it'll be Noah's Archipelago. I mean, who knows? I might do a coloring book for Zamo the Destroyer at some point, but it's kind of low down the priority list. So Noah coloring pages tomorrow. Friday, Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat. Ricky B goes to sea. 2 or 3 more pages getting inked. Monday, Miles, Marv's Pursuit of Happiness. We'll finish off that scuba diving spread. Tuesday, Noah's calendar, and so on. Oh, and I'm going to try and be doing a stream now on Sunday afternoons as well. So not sure what I'll be working on there, but that's also on the schedule. Anyways, so thank you for watching, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye for now. Bye, Zamo. Don't worry, we're backing out slowly away from the lab. Anyways, catch you next time. Bye.